Hello, everyone. It's that time of the week again. It's time for another episode of Mondays with Mundy, and that's me, Jim Mundy, the historian for the Union League Legacy Foundation at the Union League of Philadelphia. Clearly, I'm not there. I'm at home in my library, talking to you from the third floor. When I was in collections management, that is, archivist and curator for the League for a number of years, I used to tell everybody that eBay was a professional's best friend because you could find anything on eBay, and it was true. I went on eBay every day. And just recently, a League member named Richard Reck went on eBay and found something from 1982. Specifically, he found an article from the Philadelphia Inquirer Sunday magazine, April 4th, 1982. And he gave it to us. And it reminded me that history doesn't have to be 100 years old to be history or worth talking about. And it can be more recent than that. And it is actually today's history already, somewhat, right? So let's take a look at this article. I think it's really fascinating, and I think you'll enjoy it as well. It brought back a lot of memories for me myself. So I'm going to go to my ubiquitous PowerPoint. There we go. I need to share it. We've got that. And then I need that bar to go up a little bit. There you go. We do that, and voila, we have it. Okay. So today's episode is called Fort Civility, the Union League in 1982. And here is the cover of that. You can see it's April the 4th. It's Lincoln Hall, by the way, and of course it doesn't look anything like that today. The gentleman in the doorway is Grandel Green, who at one point was bootblack in the barbershop, and who became banquet captain and one of the most beloved, employees of the League for a number of years and for many, many ways. So that's great. And Grandel, by the way, is still alive. Lives in an assisted living facility in Mount Airy, so still doing well. I guess we all wonder, does he just pop the door anymore? All right. As you can see, so it is called Fort Civility, Battling Elite Loneliness at the Union League, but it's a lot more than just that. Take my word for it. So what is it about? It's about opening up the League to the public, because the League rarely ever did that, to be honest. When I went to the League in May of 1978, it was still very much a closed institution, a Victorian men's club, very Dickensian, to be honest. I worked with some wonderful people, and especially my first job in the summer of 78 was in the main office. I worked with two gentlemen who were just the epitome of Bob Cratchit, unfortunately. And there were enough Ebenezer Scrooges around to make that relationship work. But that's the way it was. But just 4 years later, though, the League is already beginning to loosen up. And I think the League understood that it can't be of the world without being in the world, and hence this article. It was written by a fellow named Art Carey, who was really great, brilliant, great, wonderful writer, insightful, a prep school grad. So he understood the sociology behind the League, and the article itself is wonderful. So he goes on to talk about how, the League still has a number of old Philadelphia family names on the membership registers, whether it's Listers or Lippincott or Morris and Pugh, although they were more 19th century names than 18th century names. There were a few of those as well, believe it or not. He also goes on to talk about how there are a lot of names that don't belong in the social register or weren't on the social register. Names that begin with or ended with a vowel, Irish, Italian, Jewish, African American, right? And then, horror of all horrors, there was actually Democrats in the House. My gosh. He overheard a conversation in the men's room one day, and one member asked the other member, who are you afraid of the most inside the League, women or Democrats? And apparently, without thinking, the other gentleman said, Democrats. But by this point in time, the League had already crossed two of the three sociological thresholds that needed to get itself back into the 20th century. The first was in 1974. The League admitted its first African-American member, William Thaddeus Coleman, who shortly afterwards would become Gerald Ford's Secretary of Transportation. And then in 1976, when Burton H. Etherington Jr. was the president, the League eliminated the qualification that candidates' membership voted Republican in American presidential elections, for the simple reason that there weren't enough young Republicans around anymore. And if the League was going to survive, it wasn't going to work that way. So the League understood that it needed to change, even back then. All right. So that was the first thing he's talking about. I think basically what he's saying then is that the League is all about people. And you might have heard me say it many times, but the League is just a wonderful building. And Carey goes on to talk about how it's like this giant Gilded Age ocean liner, just stationary, sitting on Broad Street. You walk in the door and there's these wonderful, the smoking room, the North Lounge, the bars, the restaurants, the barbershop, the health baths, the library, the sleeping rooms, all that kind of stuff. He said, but most of the article is about people, because people make the league. So, and Carey got that right. Okay, so he would go on to talk about it, and let's take a look at it. So that's the first page of the article itself, and you can see in the upper along the right-hand column, Jews, blacks, and Democrats. Oh my. Okay, and welcome to Oz. Okay, so very quickly he goes into talking to a gentleman named Arthur Littleton, who was the chairman of the admissions committee at the league. Art Littleton was one of the most prominent trial lawyers in Philadelphia at the time. Hard to miss Art Littleton. He was 6'4", 220 pounds, big strapping man, but as friendly and nice as you could ever imagine. And because, of course, as you can imagine, one of the great mysteries to everybody who's not a member of the league is how do you become a member of the league? And Littleton went into great detail about the membership process itself, candidate receptions, the application form, the process itself. And believe it or not, the process is the same today as it was back then, okay? Because people would always worry about, is the league diluting the process, diluting the standards? And the answer was always going to be no, it's not, and it didn't. So I'm going to read you some quotes from the paper itself, from the article itself. I generally don't read anything, but I think in this case, I don't know that I can paraphrase it. So I'm going to read it, so if you'll forgive me. So this is what Mr. Littleton had to say about the membership itself and who is the league looking for as a member. Okay, so he says, what we're really after are people who are financially responsible, so the club will be paid its dues and fees, people who will not walk off with the spoons, napkins, and artwork, although the artwork does stick around, but I'm sure we're missing a couple of some spoons and napkins. That part's inevitable. All right, and people who will not make so much noise that they disturb other members who want a nice, comfortable place to take their clients, friends, and wives for lunch or dinner. Okay, there you have it in a nutshell. Now, Art Carey then went on to ask a past league president, Samuel Fulton, pretty much the same question. And Sam Fulton was, to say the least, a character, a bit of an imp, if you will, and this is what Mr. Fulton had to say. And this was too good to pass up. I just had to read this one. So he said, we want to know, this is about candidates, do you pay your bills? Do you live with your wife? And are you running around screwing the maid? And if you knew Mr. Fulton, that was tame. So, but let me read you something else from Sam Fulton, all right? Because at this point in the club's history, its major philanthropic approach was something called the Boys Work Committee, today's Youth Work Committee, all right? And of course, that led to the Scholarship Foundation, the Scholarship Committee, and things like that. And Sam Fulton at this point is chairman of the Scholarship Board, all right? And at this point, Sam Fulton's 89 years old, and here I think. That's looking on up. Oh, there he is, upper right-hand corner. That's Sam Fulton, Lincoln Memorial Room. Okay, so this is what he said about the Scholarship Committee and the Boys Work Committee at this point in time. He says, a lot of these boys come out of the bad end of town. Right? I find that a lot of, we don't look just for brains. I find that a lot of C students, after they get out in the world, build the chemical companies and design the rockets. This is one of the finest things the league does, and it still is to this day. But you can see now where Sam Fulton's really coming from. I think that's because he was one of those boys once upon a time. If I remember correctly, he was born in Kensington. And not surprisingly, he became a textile broker in his professional career. So you can see how where the league is at this point in time in terms of its philanthropic mindset, but also its membership mindset at the same time. So what kind of members was the league attracting? And this is a point when the exodus to the suburbs was just really beginning. It hadn't really gone full-fledged. That would happen a little later in the 1980s. So Art Carey included a list of a bit of the who's who, if you will, of the league. So let's take a look at some of those names, all right? So we have James F. Bodine, managing partner of the Greater Philadelphia Partnership, former president of First Pennsylvania Corporation, First Pennsylvania Bank. And for those of us with gray hair like me, remember that, all right? Tom Brookshire, network sportscaster and former Philadelphia Eagle. William S. Cashel Jr., vice chairman of the board of AT&T, all right, and former president of Bell of Pennsylvania. Okay. William T. Coleman Jr., we mentioned earlier, all right, and now he's a private lawyer practicing in Washington, D.C., but still a member of the league. All right. Fitz Eugene Dixon Jr., great grandson of Peter A.B. Widener of Titanic fame, philanthropist and former owner of the Philadelphia 76ers, and one of the most popular Philadelphians in the city at that point in time. William Fishman, who was chairman of the board of ARA Services. And ARA is still one of the most dominant Fortune 500 companies in the city of Philadelphia itself. Bill Giles, president of Philadelphia Phillies. David Gerard DiCarlo, chairman of the board of Septim. Right? You can see the variety of the members' backgrounds here and things like that. Roger Hillis, chairman of the board of the Provident National Corporation, Provident Bank, and a great guy, right? Vincent Kling, chief architect and senior partner of the Kling Partnership, probably the city's most famous architectural firm at that point in time, and the builder of the core of Center City, from Penn Center Complex to the MSB building and things like that. So, Dr. C. Everett Koop, who at that point was the U.S. Surgeon General and who was a medical pioneer, best remembered probably for disjoining the co-joined twins medically. So, and really quite a character too, if you will. Thatcher Longstreth, president of the Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce, and Mr. Philadelphia in many, many ways. Sam McKeel, president of the Philadelphia Newspapers. All right, Roger Penske, chairman of the board of Penske Corporation, and owner and builder of Indianapolis 500 racing cars. Who would have thought? Then Robert Montgomery Scott, from the other spectrum. And Robert Montgomery Scott came from old Philadelphia families and some older money and some newer money. But at this point, he also represents Philadelphia in the way I think that Thatcher Longstreth did. But at this point, he's president of the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Right? Hal Sargenti, president of Arco Chemical Corporation, right? And they were still in Philadelphia. And then Henry Wendt, president and chief executive officer of Smith Kline Beckman, now GlaxoSmithKline. So you can see the variety of backgrounds of these members, even in the early 1980s. Okay, so all right. Now, obviously, the early 1980s were a tough time economically. There were small recessions going on. I remember the league. It's when the league was, getting rid of some assets, if you will, to help make ends meet. And so people were always worried that the membership standards were being diluted and that they were too lax and things like that. But really, they weren't. And if you read the article, and it's on my desk, I encourage everybody when you come into the league to stop down to the Heritage Center, come into the office, and please read the article. It's really phenomenal, and maybe we'll photocopy it if you'd like, and things like that. I think it really is incredibly insightful to the league 38 years ago. But so they also interviewed a couple of people, a couple of members, and why they thought the league was so unique and important. And they interviewed J. Liddon Pennock, Jr., who was president of the Academy of Music, the social position in all of Philadelphia, chairman of the Philadelphia Flower Show, one of the greatest events in Philadelphia on an annual basis then and now. And he was president of Pennock Florists, which were on Walnut Street back then. And this is what he said. The Union League is a great cross-section of anybody who is anything in Philadelphia. It covers all facets of Philadelphia society and includes among its members the movers, the men who are active in affairs of the city. It's much more representative of what Philadelphia is all about than almost any other club. So I think the message that's coming across is that the admission standards didn't change. They were tough back then as they are today. But that the league welcomed, candidates from all walks of life because the league is the center of that, the elite of Philadelphia. Right. So elite versus hereditary aristocracy, Union League versus Philadelphia Club. Okay, because Carey brings that issue up as well. But before we go down that road, though, since we're talking about the membership standards and the laxity and who are the members and who they aren't, Carey also interviewed an old friend of his, who was also an old prep school friend, but someone he describes as to the manner born. It doesn't name this gentleman by name, but this is what his friend had to say about the Union League. From his perspective, and again, this gentleman's father was a member of the Philadelphia Club once upon a time. So here we go. The Union League is not what it used to be. All the people who belong are trying to pretend that it's exclusive. But it's about as accessible as the JCs. They let people like cattle there. The guys are no different from the Elks and the Moose. It's fine for people who want to use it for business purposes and its convenience, but there's absolutely nothing exclusive about it. Absolutely nothing. Anybody can get in. Half the time, corporations are paying for the membership. And sometimes they did, because there were no corporate memberships. They're all individual, as they were then and as they are today. And this friend of ours, Carey's, finishes with, the decor is tacky. the clocks are not beautiful Philadelphia clocks, but these big, ugly Victorian monstrosities with windows in them so you can see the chimes. Why not? It's a Victorian club. It's a Victorian building, right? The Oriental rugs are suspicious looking. I just love that one. The Union League is a tacky place, and it's even tackier to write about. Why are you talking to me? You know? So there's the other side of the coin, right? So why was our Carey talking? Because Carey would go on to make the case, as did some other people, that Philadelphia needs the Union League, and the League needs Philadelphia, right? So in 1950, sociologist E. Digby Baltzell at the University of Pennsylvania wrote a pioneering book of its kind called Philadelphia Gentlemen, The Making of a National Upper Class. It was the first time anybody had tried to analyze how an upper class evolves over time and how it functions within a larger society or city, whatever it may be. Ben Baltzell is most well known for as the creator of the term WASP, that is White Anglo-Saxon Protestant. And Baltzell is a Philadelphian. Right? Didn't belong to the Union League. I don't think he was a joiner. And Baltzell, if anybody knew Philadelphia inside out, it was definitely Baltzell. Now, his counterpoint to some of this was a fellow named Nathaniel Burt, who taught at Princeton University, another academic, but he taught in the music department, believe it or not. And Nathaniel Burt was the great-grandson of a 19th century League member named Nathaniel Burt at the same time. But Burt had written a book called Perennial Philadelphians. Still a great book to read. A lot easier than Philadelphia Gentlemen because it's more social and anecdotal and very witty. I mean, Burt could turn a phrase better than anybody else. So I'm going to read you some passages in this article from both of them so you get an idea of what their positions are and how they viewed the League at this point in time and why the League played such an important role in Philadelphia than as I do think it does today. So, right. So this is what Burt had to say. Right. Said, indeed, through the years, the Union League has fulfilled its aristocratic responsibility to assimilate the up-and-coming elite by opening its doors to many men from humble backgrounds, men who, through hard work, ingenuity, and shrewdness, have made discoveries, built industries, and amassed fortunes. It has been the club of achievers and meritocrats, up by the bootstrap hustlers with degrees and hard knocks. By contrast, the caste-conscious Philadelphia Club has long catered to Philadelphia's hereditary aristocracy. In many cases, people whose main claim to fame is that a hardy ancestor came to America on the Mayflower or fought in the Revolution. Right? So you can see how Carey is making this claim. So sorry about that. Okay. All right. And what else? And so Baltzell will go on to say, typically, members of the Philadelphia Club decorate the boards of city banks and corporations, while members of the Union League actually run those banks and corporations. You can see the distinctions being made there as well between the social function and the function of these economic and commercial elites in the city, right? Okay, and Burt put it very succinctly. The Philadelphia Club is prestige. The Union League is power. And there you go. Says it all right there. So let me read one more quote to close out. I think this is really important. Okay, because again, 1982, 2000, things haven't changed a whole lot. So this is the last quote from Baltzell. The biggest danger of the modern world is the atomization of leadership. The Union League exists to counteract elite loneliness. It provides a place where members of the elite can interact with one another outside of business hours. This is the tragedy of the Route 128 phenomenon. That is, pretend it's Philadelphia companies moving out to the suburbs is what he's talking about. All right? Okay? The top executives of Smith, Klein, and INA and the Inquirer and the city's bankers and lawyers and stockbrokers ought to be eating at the Union League every day and meeting different elite people. This leads to trust, friendship, order, and stability. It is a badly needed civilizing force in our society. It's like, there you go, folks. Right? This is your Union League. This is your club. This is your city. These are your suburbs. Right? This is your heritage. It's your patrimony. And this is what it's all about. So I really sincerely invite you to come into the League, read the article. As I say, it's on my desk. I'm only one day a week, but if you go to the office, somebody will get it for you. Or maybe we'll just photocopy a few copies and pass them out. Right? So let's go through the rest of the PowerPoint, though. Let's go back up a little bit. So this is Lincoln Hall as it was back then. You can see it's a business luncheon, obviously, because they're all businessmen in there. And this is what Lincoln Hall looked like before it was redone in 2013, right? We talked about bowling, one of the sports that were played by the League. I mean, the League had It had pool and billiards. It had bowling, cards, chess, the whole 9 yards, you name it. Social functions, and that's a dinner dance in the lower left-hand corner called the old quad parties. They were held in what is now the mead room and the grant room back then, and they always had culinary themes like April in Paris or something Irish in March and stuff like that, but fun stuff. And Carrie talks about this Gilded Age, ship, if you will, ocean liner sitting on Broad Street. And this is the look down the 15th Street corridor towards Broad Street, and you get some idea of that. And then, of course, younger members, because the league needed younger members then as it does now. And there's a guy named, that's Mr. Luff. I forget his first name because we weren't supposed to call members by their first name back then, only by their last name. So, and he was one of the nicest guys you'd ever want to meet. Okay, and so was this guy, Jay Euler, Charles J. Euler, no longer a member, but and he's sitting in a room. And here's a challenge for everybody: name that room, and maybe I'll buy a free drink in the old cafe or something if you get it right. Let me know. Okay. So anyway, so I'm going to stop babbling. I hope you enjoyed that. It was really very different. I think it's good to know about our more recent past than our ancient past. So again, if you have any questions, email me if you want a copy. We'll get one in the mail to you. Remember, it's MundyJ, MUNDYJ @unionleague.org. We'll help you read it because it's worth reading. Go on eBay. I checked before I started this video, and it's not on there now, but it could be tomorrow or the day after. And with all that, once again, I think we need to thank the Legacy Foundation for sponsoring this weekly video series. It's a lot of fun. I hope you're enjoying it. And it's still an interesting world out there. So everybody stay well, stay safe, and stay healthy. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in a week. Goodbye now.